I had the amazing privilege to get to hear Mr. Tony Kriz speak at our Connection, Writers Connection. And I think my brother knows a little bit about being anchored in hope after hearing his testimony. I'm not going to give it away because it's his story, but I remember that night how much it touched me. Cornelia also told me that it's because of Tony that one of our keynote speakers is here. He kind of put a little bug in her ear about Sister Deidre, and so this brother kind of, he in the know. I like that. But more than that, he's more than the know. He is the author of Residence at Warner Pacific. He teaches there. He really believes in the power of community, and he does it in his own home. He also has an amazing book. I did buy his book, Neighbors and Wise Men, Sacred Encounters in a Portland Pub. Imagine. And Other Unexpected Places. Jesus is everywhere. He really is. So he told me not to tell too much about him, that he's chill, that he's a good person to be your first speaker, you know. He's been helping me out. He's like, do you know where the mic? Oh, you do. We need the mics. Tell me. Thank you, Tony. And he's also on our advisory board for Faith and Culture Writers, and we thank you for being a part of us. Come on, Tony.
Thanks, dear. All right. Okay. So, hi, I'm Tony. So not that long ago, it was a warm summer evening in Portland, Oregon. And it's probably about 8 o'clock in the evening, still sort of the glow of dusk a little bit around, and my friend Wilson Smith calls me, and he says, hey, why don't you come downtown, we'll hang out for a while. So I hop in my rattle-trap Volvo, and I drive from North Portland into downtown Portland. And he wants to meet at Jake's Grill, which is down on 10th Street, not to be mistaken with Jake's Fish House, which is up on 12th Street, which is also an excellent establishment, but we were at Jake's Grill on 10th. And I drove in, it's really, really busy downtown, a lot of people around, hard to find parking, but I managed to find Princess parking just a block and a half from Jake's Grill. So I pull in, I get out of my car, and the smell of the Culinary Institute is in the air. And the sidewalks are full of people. And they are all addicted to their agenda and to their cell phones as they walk past me. And so I decide to return the favor. And I go straight about my business, and my phone rings. I pick it up, and it's my friend James, who I hadn't talked to in years, who was one of my roommates in college. I'm like, James, what's going on? We're chatting a little bit as I'm sort of weaving through people, and I cross the street, and I'm standing there by the train station, a little trolley car station there. I'm waiting for the light to change. I can see Wilson across the street through the large plate glass windows. I'm talking to my friend James on the phone. The walking man comes up, and I cross the boulevard, and I'm walking up to Jake's, and I grab the handle of that big brass and glass door, and I start to pull it, when all of a sudden, boom! This guy is right in my grill. And I'm looking up. He's a little bit taller than me, all gangly. He's got scraggly hair, and he's wearing a soiled flannel shirt and big boots. He's standing there, and I'm like, James, you're going to have to hold on for a second. Okay, I'll be right back. I promise. Hi. And the guy's like, hey, you got $1? Hold on. What? You got $1. Why? I'm hungry. And there's a pizza place up on 11th. They have good pizza. Do you have $1? Hold on. You're telling me there's a pizza place on 11th where you can get a slice of pizza for $1? Because if that's true, I want to know about this place because I like cheap food. And he's looking at me all like, what's going on? I'm like, you're telling me you can get pizza for $1? It's like, no. A slice of pizza costs $3.50. So do you need $1 or do you need $3.50? And he looks at me like I'm speaking Persian. He goes, well, I guess I need $3.50. I'm like, well, why didn't you ask for that? Hold on. So I'm like, with one hand, like digging through my wallet, my front pocket, I managed to cobble together 3 $1 bills and 2 quarters. And I place it in the guy's hands, right? His big old huge hands. I place it in, and he crumples his hands over the top of it. And his face just kind of breaks into daylight. And he turns and he starts to stomp up the street. And I'm like, James, did you catch all that? He's like, yeah. I go to grab the door again to go in to hang out with Wilson when I hear the boots again. But this time they're coming toward me with vigor. So I turn just in time to see the gangly man coming at me with one arm fully cocked. And he comes to me and he swings. And he catches me full on in the shoulder. And as he catches me, the cell phone flies out of my hand and lands 12 feet away from me on the sidewalk and busts in a little kind of explosion of plastic and electronic parts. And I'm like, that's my phone. And James is confused. And while I'm looking at it, I hear the sound. Like mourning and pain all wrapped into one as the gangly man begins to cry out so loud that everyone within half a block is staring at us. And I turn around and his knuckles are dug into the soft parts of his cheeks and he's screaming. And I grab him by both shoulders because my hands are free now. I'm like, dude, it's a phone. You're a person. That's a phone. You're a person. It's a phone. You're a person. Now, everything in me wants to stop the story there. Because if I stop the story there, you might think that I'm the hero of the story. You might think I'm a good guy who gives money away freely and wants other people to feel more human, because that's what I want to do when I tell a story. But that would not be the best version of this particular story. That's a phone. You're a person. And the gangly man looks down at me, and he smiles, and he nods, and he winks, and tells me that I'm a person too. And then he turns and he walks away, because he rescued me that night. I was the one addicted to my agenda. I was the one addicted to my cell phone. I was the one ignoring all the people walking past me, because that's what I do. He saved me. Now, when my writer friends and I get together, and writers are weird, aren't we? Kind of find one another, and we all sort of become friends. So when we get together and talk, when we can kind of get past our poop, thank you, Newburgh Friends, for inviting us to be here. When we can get past our poop, we start to talk. We realize that in a lot of ways we are a very insecure lot. We like to drop into the conversation ways that we've been published. Name drop other writers that maybe we know. find ways to disperse our resume throughout the conversation. And one of the things we do is we make ourselves the hero of all of our stories. I am partial to a fellow named Jesus of Nazareth. I am partial to him. We live in a communal household in North Portland, and one of the things that we do is we talk about Jesus as a creative an awful lot. And Jesus was a pretty amazing creative. He was a woodworker. He was a winemaker. Come on. He was arguably the greatest performance artist in the history of mankind. But the thing he's most famous for is being a wordsmith. Jesus was a great wordsmith. And there's so many opportunities where he could have made himself the hero of stories, and he chose not to. The kingdom of God is like a treasure hidden in a field that I decided to go buy because I figured it out. One of the things that makes Jesus such a great wordsmith is that he could work equally well in nonfiction and in fiction. So in nonfiction, his first piece of nonfiction that we're really aware of comes from Luke chapter 4. He's giving a sermon in a synagogue. And Jesus has a chance to make whoever he wants to the heroes of the story. And who are two of the heroes he chooses? A widow of Sidon and a leper from Syria. Two people who are culturally other, religiously other, classism other. These are the sorts of people that he likes to make the heroes. Jesus was great at writing fiction as well, or parables if you're more comfortable with that term. We have recorded about 40 parables in the New Testament. I find it fascinating that after a lifetime of working with wood, untold thousands of hours sitting in a wood shop or however he did it, that there's not one parable about woodworking. Like all my parables all my stories about things that I do, but not Jesus. He's like, it's not even worth putting my career sort of on display. I'm going to tell 40 stories about other people's careers, other people's vocations, other people's lifestyles, other people's stuff. And Jesus, possibly his most famous parable, he's asked, who is your neighbor? And Jesus tells a story of a religious other, a cultural other, a classist other. It's the way that Jesus does things, and it's so different than so much of what I see in our culture today in 21st century America, where we have cults of personalities. And it seems like all of us are just trying to find ways. I'll speak for myself. I'm always trying to find ways to put myself on display. About 2.5 years ago, I was sitting in Monty's Cafe on the east side with this handsome gentleman right over here, David Sanford. We were having a conversation, and we're sitting there at one of those antique dining room tables with bookshelves on both sides of us. We're in this, really quaint little spot, and we're talking across the table, and we're talking about books. Specifically, we're talking about Christian books. And David likes to talk to me about books, and I can never really figure out why, since I, at that point, had never published anything of note. And yet he wanted to talk about books. We're talking about books. We're talking about how it seems like in so much of Christian writing, the same paths have been worn over so many times, and the ruts are deep on the paths of topics. And yet just off the topics are these wide fields waiting to be explored. It seems like no one wants to go into. Josh Butler just finished a book where he tears his shirt off and runs into one of those fields to explore a new idea. Can I tell him the title? Skeletons in God's Closet. Dang. So we're talking, and we're having this conversation, and, what are these topics that people aren't writing about? And I said, Dave, you know what I would love to have somebody write a book about? I'd love to have somebody write a book about how people outside of Christianity, outside of Christendom, have taught the author the gospel of Jesus and healed them spiritually. And David looks at me and says, could you write that book? So as soon as he asked me the question, I start to fall into one of those memory wormholes, like when suddenly time stops over here and you're going back into life and you're remembering things. So the first place I'm falling in this validation wormhole. I'm going down. And the first place I end up is in Budapest, Hungary. About 10 years earlier, I'm sitting in a restaurant just off the Váci utca, and across the table is Dan Elliott, and it's my birthday. And Dan Elliott's across the table, and he's trying to be friendly. He's trying to be my friend. I'm in a time of total pain. I've just been fired from my job as a missionary. I don't know what to do. I feel like my future is gone. And Dan looks at me across the table, and Dan says, hey, Tony, I got a question for you. If you were ever to write a book, what would you want to write about? I remember saying it, and I was like, what on earth are you talking about? Do you know who I am? I am a failure. My reputation is shot. No one would ever want to read anything that I write. How could you ask me that question? And then I start to fall again, farther into the wormhole. And then suddenly I'm back in my second grade classroom, where once again, this is now my third grade school in second grade. And once again, I've been placed in the most remedial classes for reading and writing because I'm dumb. And I have learning disabilities. And the coping mechanisms that I learned at each school in order to survive and work my way through the test, each new school's got a new way of doing it, and so I have to start over. My coping mechanisms aren't working anymore. And I have to go through with a whole new group of kids who make fun of me on the playground. And so David asked me, could you write that book? And I've got all of this backstory going on inside of me. Could you write that book? Well, 6 months later, there was a manuscript with 40 stories of Muslims, and Jews, and Buddhists, and atheists, and irreligious folks, all of which who had taught me things about the gospel of Jesus, and at some of my most painful seasons of life had healed me spiritually in ways that I could not have predicted or hoped for. I wanted to call the book Disciple of the Damned. Thomas Nelson felt like Neighbors and Wise Men might be a better choice. I think one of the reasons I ended up here is Cornelia and I have talked many times about just writing and things, and every time we talk, I tell her that I am not a writer. And she laughs at me, but that's my honest feeling. The fact that I've published books and I write regularly, I don't feel like a writer, probably because I feel a bit like a poser. And I just really wasn't sure. So this last December, I had an epiphany. For the first time in my life, I literally woke up one morning and I was like, I'm a writer. It was the first time that I could own that phrase. It's been a big deal for me. So one of my writing mentors is a fellow named Frank, And Frank's great. Frank teaches me that, he tells me all the time, you have to write for the sake of art. You have to write for the sake of beauty. You have to write that it would be you would always be moving towards the most beautiful form that you can possibly write. You have to do that. We do, from Frank's perspective, we don't write for pragmatic reasons. We never write for a career. We always write for the art. The other thing that he told me that has stuck with me is writing, rejecting the very idea that you're trying to explain, describe, argue for, rejecting that idea must always be on the table. Even if you're writing about your beliefs, your faith in God, rejecting that idea must be on the table. You must be willing to risk, to go as close to the idea, the precipice of actually rejecting the idea by following the writing wherever it might lead, if you want to be honest. So, this last year, I was commissioned by my 4-year-old nephew, who was dying of inoperable cancer, to write a book. He didn't know he was commissioning me. But the book was about how do we live this life with a God who hides from us, often when we feel like we need God's presence the most. That book, the manuscript just finished. It's called Aloof. And in that book, I do surf fairly close to the edge of that cliff. When I was prepping for this, I was thinking, why would you all come here? I mean, if you want to learn about writing, get a web browser. Go to Powell's. They have a room about writing and how to write. If you want to listen to sort of quasi-interesting personalities give speeches, I'm sure all of us are on the interweb. www.todykriz.com. I think one of the reasons that we're here together is all around you. Because the one thing that we can't manufacture in a bookstore or by staring at a computer screen is this gathering of souls. That we are in a room where we get to process these ideas with other people. We get to take arms with other people and be in this with other people. So I want to do something, and the organizers of the conference have no idea what I'm about to do, by the way. So you can blame this on me. I want you to turn in your seat, just kind of, scooty, so you can see as much of the room. Don't look at me anymore. Look at the room. So figure out how to, scooch. And here's what I'm going to do. I am going to read a series of statements. And if the statement is true of you, I want you just to raise your hand. And I want you to leave it up until I say thank you and put it back down. The goal here is for us to, get to know one another a little bit. And each other as writers, writer wannabes, creatives. By the way, I'm going to use the word writer in here, but if you're a creative in some other realm besides wordsmithing, just put your own creative medium in the line that says writer, and you can still raise your hand, okay? So I'm going to read this. If it's true, you put your hand up. And what you want to do is you want to look around and see who's like you. Who's dealing with the same things you are. Or look around and see who's not like you. Who's dealing with other things. So we can share ourselves with one another to start this time together. Okay? Here's the deal. This is important. If I read something that's true of you, and you're like, oh, I don't know these people. then don't raise your hand. If you don't want to raise your hand, don't raise your hand. It's your story. It's your business when you share your story, and when you don't share your story, you're not lying. You're just saying, by leaving your hand down, I'm choosing not to share that part of my life right now with these people. Perfectly fine. But I would like to invite you into courage. Thank you for saying right, whoever that was. Okay. So looking at one another, to read a series of statements. If it's true of you, put your hand up until I say thank you, then put it down. I am thrilled to be at this conference. Leave them up. Acknowledge each other's stories. Thank you. I am not sure if I'm thrilled to be at this conference. No. Honor each other's stories. Look around. Your job is to look around. Look around. Okay. I write in part hoping through it people will like me. Look around.
You're all liars!
Never try this with communicators. Thank you. I came here with sorrow or mourning on my heart. Look around. Thank you. Writing is one of the most fulfilling things in my life, or other creative pursuit. Thank you. I feel like a failure. Thank you. Please honor each other's stories. We honor each other by looking at one another. I feel misunderstood. Thank you. Writing for me is a spiritual discipline. Thank you. I feel unsupported in my writing. I feel unsupported in my writing. Look around. You're not alone. Thank you. I have a hard time believing that I am talented. Thank you. Writing makes me happy. Thank you. I don't particularly like books. Thank you. I feel dumb. Thank you. I would write even if no one ever read my writings. Thank you. I would never write if others didn't read my writings. I am a writer. Thank you.